Hey gang, what's up? Just Ehren right here, Canadian Looney. How y'all doing? WACKO Wednesday. Should be a pretty crazy day in the House of Commons. The last few have been. I suspect Trudeau will show up today. How's everybody doing? We've got just me, Tommy Gunn, Mike Tremblay, Kirk, Captain Kirk, Michelle Ladisor, Raz, my man. What's going on? I saw Mike Meloche in here earlier, as per usual. Yeah, welcome back, Mike Tremblay. How's the new gig been? Hope you're enjoying that. Anyhow, guys, smash the like, consider subscribing, consider a membership. We're going to jump into some videos. We've got quite a bit of things to show. On Wednesdays, the House of Commons doesn't kick off for another 29 minutes, they say from now, but they're usually 5 minutes late. So we've got material to cover that in the meantime. To start things off, we're going to take a look at this loser, Mark Holland. He's a joke. And I don't know if you saw the video we did on committee yesterday. He makes a jackass of himself on the regular.
I want to take a moment today to provide an update on the recall that was issued in July from Silk and Great Value plant-based beverages due to listeria contamination. I will say that with the investigation concluded, that I'm prepared now to speak to the initial findings from the Inspector General's report, as well as to talk to the next steps forward in the process, given the finding of the Inspector General's report, I should say. In the first order, this was a tragedy. This was any time as a result of problems in the food supply, there's death. It's entirely unacceptable, and so it's imperative that we shut any deficiencies and understand what went wrong. CFIA has put out a statement that's available now, as I understand it, on their website. I'm not seeing anybody contradicting on me that, so it's now available on their website. As part of the recall investigation, again, that recall taking place in July, we found a couple of things that were important. The facility in question, in the first order, was not adhering to Health Canada's policy with respect to listeria. That obviously was unacceptable. The factor to consider here is that the facility more broadly was producing juice and iced tea as well as plant-based products. That those plant-based products, the best science at the time, had stated that it was a low risk for listeria. In fact, in 2022, the CFIA had completed a 3-year survey of plant-based milk alternatives and found them to be at low risk. But just because something is low risk is not an excuse not to be adherent to those policies, and it is certainly brought to be evident here that the science can change. And what we think is safe may turn out not to be. And as it turns out that our concerns with respect to listeria in plant-based products, it flips the board and makes us realize that we have to be much more vigilant and that that is a vector of risk that was larger than was scientifically understood at the time. I want to say that this is also providing an opportunity to say to all companies the importance of adhering to Health Canada's policy, not just when an investigation occurs, but in between investigations. And that's exceptionally important not only for the safety of Canadians and the food they consume, but also, frankly, for the companies and for the goodwill of the companies and for the value of those companies. When they are not adherent to Health Canada policies, and we have an incident of this nature, it does enormous reputational damage to them. Canada is known to have one of the safest food supplies in the world. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is known to be one of the strongest agencies in the world in protecting food supply. And when you don't adhere and you have these kind of incidences, it not only jeopardizes human health, but it jeopardizes that essential reputation. I will say the Inspector General has already begun an initial review of the circumstances surrounding this recall and to identify risks that could lead to similar incidents. The President of the CFIA will further direct the Inspector General to lead a review of manufactured goods establishments, including those producing plant-based products, to ensure they comply with the Safe Food for Canadians regulations and follow Health Canada's listeria policy. Furthermore, we will ensure and verify that CFI delivers its plan to inspect those remaining manufactured good establishments that have not already been inspected since coming into force of the Safe Food for Canadians regulation. There will be a report on a number of the consumer complaints received across establishments that will make recommendations on how CFIA can use this information to improve risk assessment modeling that will inform future inspection frequency. And that includes now, as I have to reemphasize, plants that we thought were low risk, plant-based products we didn't imagine Listeria would be present as that science has changed. With that, I'm prepared to take any questions folks have. Being no questions, thank you so much.
Nobody has any questions for Mark Holland. We just want him off the stage. He's brutal, guys. Absolutely brutal. What a Fruit Loop. Anyways, let's get into this. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here? Oh, yeah.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF.
Here. I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The worst that works.
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
Selves are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off
Just like you,
the
man.
culture of drugs. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. You got the briefcase. It's on the game, though, right?
There is so much breaking news here in Ottawa today. These two things that I'm going to talk to you about today are not being reported on by the mainstream media. So before I get into this video, which is about breaking news that the federal government, the federal Liberals, are looking at imposing a digital ID on Canadians. So I'm going to break down what's happening for you. It's breaking in Ottawa right now. I need you to do a few things for me. So there's two big issues that are happening today. In this video, I'm going to talk about the video, the digital ID. The link in the comments that I just posted is on another story. It's about a competition issue with e-transfer fees. I've written a huge long form article about it for you, and I just have one ask for you. It's really hard to work around Justin Trudeau's censorship ban, his censorship bills. If you click on the link that's in the comments and click subscribe, it's free. It allows me to directly communicate with you and get this news to you as a legislator so that you know what's going on. So before I get into the digital ID thing, please click on the link that's in the comments, have a read through this article, and most importantly, click subscribe. It's a way that you can help Conservatives fight back, fight Justin Trudeau's censorship agenda by clicking subscribe, and it's free. It allows us to directly communicate with you. Okay. The other thing that you can do is, this video is actually going to shock you. I was shocked to read this. I need you to share this video and also click subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook. But I need you to share this video so that we can get the word out. Okay, so this is a story that's just broken. It's just been posted by Blacklock's.
Digital IDs, guys, is a very bad idea. Like, what's next? We're going to have chips put in our wrists? Oh, it's crazy.
Reporter. And the headline reads, Feds propose national digital ID. So I'm just going to read the first couple paragraphs of this article so that you can get a sense of what we're dealing with here. Federal regulators yesterday said that they are, quote, working to establish digital credentials for the public without parliamentary go-ahead. MPs have repeatedly rejected introduction of any national electronic digital ID systems as expensive and risky. And this is a quote from the article. With more businesses conducted online, the Government of Canada and interested partners need a common set of capabilities to enable people to issue, hold, and present these types of credentials to make trusted claims about themselves in a way that are user-friendly, blah, 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 said a notice to contractors by Shared Services Canada, the federal ID department. Any new system, and here's the kicker, any new system should allow regulators to revoke credentials, said the notice on the common set of capabilities for issuing and verifying digital credentials for the Government of Canada. It did not elaborate. The notice did not explain if enrollment would be mandatory. So what's happening here? And again, this is in Blacklock's Reporter. I'm reading right out of an article. Like this is a journalistic outlet that reports here on the Hill. I'm not making this up. This is right here. It's just breaking. So what's happening here is that in spite of, legislators saying, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. The Government of Canada, the Liberal government, is quietly going around talking about building a digital ID that's, quote, that would, quote, allow regulators to revoke credentials and did not explain if the enrollment would be mandatory. That's what we're dealing with Justin Trudeau. It's these hidden agendas where he's going out and saying, oh, no. We're not going to do these things. And then through the back door, through these like sneaky little contract things, he's saying what his actual agenda is. So I just want to be really clear. So again, if you guys can share this video, click subscribe, it helps me get the word out. I know what you guys are probably asking at this point. Well, what are you doing? What's the Conservative Party of Canada doing to stop this? Well, of course we are going to oppose this. Of course we're opposing it. I can give you guys many examples of how we've been fighting back on this. So for example, Liberal Bill C-63, their massive censorship bill, I tabled an opposing bill which would keep Canadians safe online, but, quote, expressly prohibit the use of a digital ID. It's written right into my bill to show that principle in law that we wouldn't do this. And I want to draw your attention to how hard Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been working to oppose this issue as well, too. So this goes all the way back to 2022. Here's Pierre Poilievre on his Twitter feed saying, government attempts to impose digital IDs and other intrusive tracking and surveillance message are an attack on our freedom. I will end them. So this is over 2 years ago now. He's had numerous public statements to this effect since then. And then today, in light of reports, this report, again, this is not like, you're not going to find this report on CBC. Of course you're not. But Mr. Poilievre has in fact tweeted that he's tweeted about this story. And he says common sense conservatives will ban mandatory digital IDs, full stop. So he's got a link to his petition on his Twitter page. And of course, conservatives are fighting this. But you need to know about this, right? This is kind of in an independent journalistic outlet that they do report here on the Hill. But this is not being reported on, right? And we know that Justin Trudeau's censorship bills prevent these types of stories from getting out into the public, which is why it's so important for you to share these videos, to click subscribe. And again, there's another story that I want to tell you about. I'll probably do that tomorrow in a video, but there's a link in the comment section. It's a full breakdown about an investigation that my colleague and I, another member of parliament, are asking the Competition Bureau to undertake Click on that, read it, click subscribe so that I can tell you about what's happening here in Ottawa. That's the reality these days, right? Is that the Liberals try and make these things happen in the background and then have you not find out about it. It's our job as legislators to stay on top of it, but we need you to know so that the public knows and can help us fight back too. So share this video. Rest assured that the Conservative Party of Canada, led by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, will do everything in its power to stop a mandatory digital ID. But it's right in the media this morning, folks. Feds proposed national digital ID. Isn't that something? Share this video, click subscribe, click the link in the comments, read it, click subscribe there. Working hard for you in Ottawa. Have a great day.
Top security officials.
This is just a couple of stories. One is from our media. Another one is from media from India on the same subject, and see the way that they skew this stuff. It's ridiculous.
Officials tried to set the record straight.
Canadian security.
About India's alleged campaign to kill Canadians and New Delhi's repeated denials.
The government of India's response was to spread a false narrative that Canada showed them no evidence.
The Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, Nathalie Drouin, testified that before the RCMP went public with allegations, she showed her Indian counterpart evidence, but got nowhere.
He refused to acknowledge any links and denied everything we presented.
2 weeks ago, the RCMP laid out allegations linking agents of the Indian government to murder, coercion, and violence on Canadian soil, allegedly contracting criminal organizations like the Bishnoi Gang to target opponents in Canada.
He asked me if...
Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister David Morrison told MPs it went right to the top, allegedly authorized by India's second most powerful politician, Amit Shah.
The journalists called me and asked me if it was that person. I confirmed it was that person.
Morrison was asked why he first shared that information with the U.S. newspaper, The Washington Post.
In fact, Canadians wouldn't know unless they were able to read The Washington Post. I just find that quite unfair to the Canadian public.
Through The Washington Post, we were speaking directly to our friends in the United States. India is coming at us full force with their own narrative, which simply doesn't add up.
The Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs was also asked whether Canada would be concerned if India replaced those 6 diplomats it expelled. Morrison says before answering that, Global Affairs is waiting for the dust to settle, but added there's a lot of dust. Donna?
Taria Isri, thanks.
We provided non-classified information. The evidence showed links to the government of India conducting illegal activities against Canadians.
We start with the India-Canada relationship. It's already at rock bottom, so it's hard to imagine things going worse, but they are. This month, India expelled 6 Canadian diplomats and recalled 6 of its own from Canada. New Delhi has virtually downgraded this relationship and placed the blame squarely on Justin Trudeau. India has accused Trudeau of pandering to terrorists. In Indian diplomacy, this kind of treatment is typically reserved for countries like Pakistan. So this is rock bottom, like I said. But Canada is not done ruining it. Yesterday, they decided to up the ante. Listen to this.
You can confirm then that the information about, for example, the Indian Home Affairs Minister and his alleged involvement in these crimes in Canada, that was not released in Canada, however. Can you confirm that? That was only released in the Washington Post, pardon me.
So this is not an information we provided to the journalists.
Mr. Morrison, can you comment? Did you provide that information?
The journalists called me and asked me if it was that person. I confirmed it was that person.
David Morrison is Canada's Deputy Foreign Minister. He was talking about Amit Shah, the Home Minister of India. Morrison was testifying before Canadian parliamentarians. He claims that Amit Shah is targeting Khalistanis in Canada, that he personally ordered operations against them. And this is what the West is choosing to highlight too. But they have completely ignored the full context of this conversation. Morrison was being grilled about a story in the Washington Post. We're talking about this report. It came out when the scandal exploded. The story claims that Indian diplomats were gathering intelligence about Khalistanis in Canada. And where did the Washington Post get this from? The story cites unnamed sources, someone from within the Canadian establishment. They leaked this information to the Washington Post. Do you know who their source was? The same David Morrison, Canada's Deputy Foreign Minister, and Nathalie Drouin. She's Canada's National Security Advisor. Yesterday, both of them were questioned about the leak, and they admitted to leaking sensitive information, saying that this was part of a deliberate strategy.
We provided non-classified information on the action we had taken to cooperate with India and explain how the evidence showed links to the government of India conducting illegal activities against Canadians, including threats to their lives.
Now, it is a well-known fact. The Trudeau administration does not like being criticized by the Indian press. They call it foreign interference. They have accused several Indian journalists and media outlets of interference, and this list includes First Post. It's a list maintained by the Government of Canada. It emerged earlier this month. The report was called Potential Foreign Information Manipulation. Now, tracking and labeling Indian journalists is bad enough. These leaks are worse. They set a dangerous precedent. This is information warfare. The Canadians weaponized the Washington Post and used selective leaks to build a counter-narrative. Washington Post, as you would know, is an American newspaper. As far as we know, the print edition is not published in Canada. So why didn't the Trudeau government go to a Canadian outlet first? Even Canadian lawmakers are asking this question.
In fact, Canadians wouldn't know unless they were able to read the Washington Post. I just find that quite unfair to the Canadian public that details were released in advance to the Washington Post and confirmed, according to Mr. Morrison, to the Washington Post, but not provided to Canada. Don't you find that odd?
The reason why we offered, as I said in my opening remarks, a background interview to the Washington Post was really to make sure that our side of the story will become clearly and be widely spread, especially at the international level. That was the strategy behind the background interview we gave.
Now, once again, the Canadians have shot themselves in the foot. These disclosures should alarm all sides, both the international community and the citizens of Canada. They should all be worried. Should they trust their government if it goes around leaking sensitive information, that too to a foreign publication? Can Canada's international partners trust Ottawa with intelligence if there is risk of leaks like these? More importantly, why were Justin Trudeau and his government forced to resort to a leak to make their case? Why couldn't they engage with India instead, work with Indian diplomats, share concrete evidence, and seek a resolution through diplomatic channels? India's External Affairs Minister spoke about this over the weekend. Dr. S. Jaishankar said that India had warned Canada about the rising threat of extremists in the country.
There are a small minority of people there, but who have made themselves into what appears to be a bigger political voice. Today, they are saying, things about us. But if you actually look, who first raised the presence of organized crime in Canada? We were telling them. We were telling them and they were not listening. So we certainly on our side, we have actually in many ways been the people who have reasoned with the Canadian system saying, look, don't go down this extremist path.
But Justin Trudeau took a different path. Instead of confronting extremists, Trudeau gave the Khalistanis an entry into the mainstream. And Canada's leader of opposition seems to be going down the same path. That's Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre and his Conservative Party are being slammed by Hindu groups in Canada. That's because they pulled out of a Diwali event. Poilievre has not given a reason for the decision, but it is clear that the divide is deepening and it is directly impacting the Indian community in Canada. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is waging a war of his own with election campaigning in its final.
Sorry, guys, not to wet your whistle there with a little Donald Trump, but that's a look at the Indian news. We'll do that once in a blue moon, and they call it Indian news themselves, so that's what I'm going to call it. You heard her identify it as India media, India news, many times just in that story, so no one needs to correct me there. Yeah, so let's take a look at our doofus Prime Minister here for a second, see if he has anything to say about this.
Today we're moving forward on important legislation focused on pregnancy crisis centers to make sure that women get the right information about the services and support that they need when they're making important life choices. We're always going to be there as a government, as a party, to stand up for women.
All of these things going on in the country, and he comes out talking about abortion, which is, Lord, it's so frustrating what they do.
Rights for women's reproductive rights and push back against anyone who's trying to take those rights away. Aujourd'hui, on avance sur un projet de loi qui va réglementer et s'assurer que les centres de crise de conversations with Mr. Blanchette. We agree as a party that we need to work on supporting vulnerable people and doing more for our seniors. It's one of the reasons why we've been so enthusiastic about delivering dental care to so many seniors across the country. And we're going to continue to look for ways to help Canadians through these difficult times and work constructively with everyone in the House. J'ai eu de bonnes conversations avec M. Blanchette au cours des dernières semaines. On va continuer de chercher des façons d'aider les gens vulnérables, incluant les aînés. On est très fiers d'être à presque 1 million d'aînés, de gens qui ont pu avoir des soins dentaires. On va continuer.
Il n'est plus question que...
Non, mais vous avez le pouvoir de le faire.
Qu'est-ce que c'est votre priorité? Excusez-moi, j'ai...
Le Bloc voudrait...
This weekend, and that's my number one job. And any moment we spend on this palace intrigue nonsense is a moment we're not spending what we should be doing, which is working hard for our constituents. That's what I'm entirely focused on.
Do you think a secret ballot would clear the air? That's my question. Do you think?
I think the only thing that matters is making sure that we are working our tails off for Canadians.
My question is, do you think a secret?
Confident about Mr. Casey. Do you want to see a secret ballot vote? What do you say to the cabinet colleagues who are saying you shouldn't have one?
Okay.
We should have one.
Yeah. Why?
I wish there was a mechanism for it, because I think there's an awful lot of people who aren't saying what they're hearing from their constituents, but are motivated by something else. I think a secret ballot would allow for those people to be responsible to their constituents. It would also bring finality. I mean, if there's a secret ballot and there's a convincing majority that vote with the Prime Minister, then we would all be duty bound to move on. And similarly, if it went the other way, I think he would be. At least we could move past this media feeding frenzy and preoccupation with internal party matters at a time when there's significant issues facing the country and an election coming up. So I think a secret ballot would be a good thing. I wish there was a mechanism for it. I hope it happens in the absence of a mechanism, but I guess we'll know tomorrow.
Has there been a formal ask?
Not to my knowledge.
But wasn't there one at the last caucus meeting? I think one MP stood up and said...
You're not asking me to divulge what happened in caucus, are you?
Est-ce que je peux vous poser une question en français?
Oui.
Pourquoi est-ce que c'est important qu'il y ait un vote secret, d'après vous, au caucus demain, là?
C'est vraiment une question de motivation. Moi, je crois que ceux qui disent en public qu'ils préfèrent que le Premier ministre continue dans sa...
But no, how come? Where's the confidence coming from?
It's coming from my view that the people that feel compelled to show strength aren't being honest with the leader.
And would he need like a... Sorry, you're going to say something?
No.
Would he need like a simple majority to pass, or like would he need to get like 80% support?
Yeah. I mean, if we were under the Reform Act, it would be clear. We're not. So that isn't at all clear to me. And that would be part of the problem. Like, if this doesn't provide finality, well, what's the point? All we've done is given you a couple more days of headlines. That may be helpful to you. It's not helpful to us.
Is it your understanding that Andrew Bevin is going to be presenting some plans tomorrow?
I don't have any understanding of what's going to happen tomorrow.
Is there any world where Mr. Trudeau, a member of his team, could convince you that there's a way he can stay? Is there anything that they could say or do at this point to change your mind about that he maybe is not the best person for the job, given what you've heard from your constituents?
No. Take care.
Mr. Casey.
Un vote secret.
Brutally frank right there. Pretty interesting to see. What do we have coming up here? And question period still hasn't started. Like, I'm keeping an eye on it.
Demain au caucus, un vote secret sur le leadership de M. Trudeau. Est-ce que vous pensez que ce serait une bonne idée?
Par des discussions.
Donc, passer.
Our security in our community, we all agree on that. There's also a growing demand for change and in our community, and we also need to address this challenge, and that's the heart of our discussion right now. And I think that it's important to allow MPs to express freely the voice of their community. I think that for me is the best way to move forward with unity on that question.
Okay, donc, are you in favor of a secret ballot tomorrow?
Yes, I am. The Liberal Party, we're a Democratic Party, and I think a secret ballot is important for members to be able to provide their input.
Was that promised to you?
No, I just think I've read through a number of media outlets, and a number of my colleagues have suggested this idea. And I think it's a good idea to clear the air so we can be unified as party members and support our leadership.
So are you going to ask for it? Are you going to ask for it? Or like who's what? Because I know a lot of people want it, but somebody has to stand and ask for it. So do you know that that's going to happen? Or is there
what happens in caucus stays in caucus. I'm not sure what will...
But there's no mechanism. How are you going to make this happen? There's no mechanism.
Well, it's a conversation we're having with you. I support it. You asked me if I support it. I support a secret ballot. I think it's a great...
Are you going to take steps to make it happen, or are you going to work with colleagues to try to
If colleagues ask me to make it happen, I will consider it. But I think it's important that we be able to express our opinions and be unified as members of the party and support our leadership. So I'm supportive of a secret ballot. As the Liberal Party being a democratic institution, it's something we should do so we can move forward, clear the air, and move forward.
Did you guys miss your chance? Did you guys miss your chance last week?
With?
To have the secret ballot and maybe ask Trudeau to leave, because this is what, several of you guys want?
Well, look, we have important discussions every week at caucus, as we had last week. I'm sure we will tomorrow and next week as well. So I think there's conversations being had, and we'll see what's being presented at caucus tomorrow by our caucus executive. And so I think I look forward to moving forward and fighting the Conservatives and looking forward to run and win the next election.
What do you mean cabinet ministers are saying they don't need a secret ballot? That it's decided. He's saying, what do you mean? These are your colleagues. They're saying we don't need one.
Yeah, I'm not aware of what cabinet ministers are saying, but I think all cabinet ministers and MPs should want to move forward and clear the air. And I think the best way to do that is to show support of our leadership. And many of our cabinet colleagues have also said that there's overwhelming support. I think that needs to be showed. And I think a secret ballot is a great way to do that so we can all move forward.
Is there a divide between cabinet and caucus on this issue? Is there a divide?
I'm not sure. I mean, I can just speak for myself. I'm not going to get into internal caucus conversations. You'll have to ask those individuals.
What are the chances a secret ballot happen? We just want to understand.
I don't know. I mean, that's our caucus executive decides the process, and I'm not sure if our caucus chair or other executive members have had this conversation or not. I'm not aware if they have or if they haven't. But I'm supportive of having one.
What's the risk if a secret ballot doesn't happen?
The risk?
That is just the secret ballot doesn't happen, that you guys are asking for the status quo, and he stays. Like, what's the risk in that?
Well, I think the risk is that these conversations could continue. I think we want to show unity within our party. I think as members of our party, folks who want to express themselves and show support for the leadership of our party, need to have a venue to be able to do that, and those who don't have that as well. And the best way to do it is to have it in a secret ballot so people can think about what the future is and how they want the future to be. And I'm supportive of it because I think the Liberal Party of Canada, as a democratic institution, should allow our members to freely be able to do what they believe in the privacy of a ballot box, and so we can move forward. I hope we can move forward with a unified approach, supporting our party and the leadership within our party, so we can get on to fighting the real opposition here, which is the Conservative Party of Canada.
If they were, yeah.
Do you think Trudeau would survive a secret ballot vote?
Look, I don't know what caucus members feel. I think the one way to see how caucus members feel is to allow them to do that. And I think that's a great way to get support, as many of my colleagues have stated. I think having an overwhelming majority of caucus to support you through that process really shows that caucus is united and behind our leadership.
If there were to be a secret ballot.
So, gang, they are kicking things off in the House of Commons now, so we're going to cross over. I can't believe we just watched that much Cahal there. He's a disgraced ex-minister, right? And he had a lot to say. He wants a secret ballot, which I think if anybody supports Trudeau, they don't want a secret ballot. So he, I don't think, supports Trudeau, which, surprised to see, I guess probably has something to do with the fact that he was a minister and now he isn't. Come on.
Canadians are heard.
Here we go, guys.
Here.
We got some subs in here for you now, Rhonda DeBlonda. Welcome back.
Mr. Speaker, 1 in 15 Canadians will be diagnosed.
And just before we get going here, we'll they're just doing their statements. This isn't question period. We'll take an opportunity to say hello to the people that I can see in the room. Annie G, how are you doing today? Christine Noseworthy, how are you doing? Dave Smith, Gus Pappas, James Vahey, Captain Kirk with Shaken Bebe, Megan RP, always good to see you. Life used to be good. Welcome. Michelle Ladisor, always a pleasure. Mike Tremblay, you're the man. Thank you for all the support, the generous donation. We appreciate it. Patty Zadow, Mofo13, Persona, Raz, Red Rose. How's everybody doing today? It's a little chilly here in Nova Scotia. No doubt about that. It's a bright sunny day, but it's right around zero here. My friend Rhonda DeBlonda, welcome back. Sorry that I can't play subtitles or captions in all the videos. I just can't. I do when I can. Good to see you back, though. Glad you had a good move. Rayman, what's shaking? Sylvain Robert, what's going on? T-Boys, welcome. And Wolfhound, always a pleasure when you're in the room. I saw Brent Parsons in here earlier. I saw Mike Malosh earlier. Mark Maloney, Lorraine Johnson. How are you guys doing? Yeah, so I can't spend too much time trying to find who's in the room.
When the eligibility of women to sit in the Senate chambers here in
We're
Canada
about 10 minutes out from
recognized.
question period.
Emily Murphy, Henrietta Edwards, Nellie McClung, Louise McKinney, and Irene Parlby have been immortalized in marble outside the current Senate chambers for us to see daily. I am honored to rise in this chamber today alongside many women I am proud to call colleagues as we recognize this special day and the women who came before us on this journey.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, today I'd like to pay tribute to Mr. François Gervais, a member of the Oka High School staff who recently opted for a phased retirement after a busy career. For almost 40 years, Mr. Gervais left his mark on hundreds of young people. Some of them still talk today about his initiatives, such as setting up a fair trade store, creating a student environmental committee, creating a humanitarian action committee, notably after the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, and creating a bridge with the Kanastaki School to forge ties between students and the community, and many other things, Mr. Speaker. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Gervais in May of 2023 when he accompanied a group of students here on the Hill to raise awareness about feminicide. I remember him as a top-notch man, driven by a deep desire to awaken young people to the challenges of tomorrow. On behalf of all of my fellow citizens, thank you, Mr. Gervais, for your unrelenting faith in our beautiful youth, our future. Have a wonderful, progressive retirement. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Argenteuil, La Petite Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UPA Outaouais Laurentide Federation is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year, and I'd like to highlight the important work it has accomplished for farmers in the Laurentians and the Outaouais, including in my riding. The UPA Outaouais Laurentide represents 2,259 farms and their 3,410 producers. They are responsible for nearly 10% of all farm businesses in Quebec. And I'd like to thank them, led by President Stéphane Allary, a dairy and field crop producer in Luxville, to have celebrated their 60th anniversary in my riding. And the banquet will be held this evening. So it's with great pleasure and pride that I welcome them to my riding. Happy 60th anniversary and long live UPA Outaouais Laurentide.
Member from Durham.
Here we go.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the police officers who serve our communities for upholding the law and protecting our families. For all of this, you deserve our gratitude.
Policing is an honorable profession. Every day, officers put their own safety at risk to keep our country safe. My community of Durham is home to police who work in Durham Region, Toronto, York Region, Peterborough, and Kawartha Lakes Police Services, as well as the RCMP. We thank you. I encourage all young Canadians with a heart for public service to consider a career in policing, where some of the best and brightest in our country protect and serve. Thank you. The Honourable Member from Mississauga-Malton.
Mr. Speaker, I am thrilled to share that an all-girls team from Darcel Avenue Senior Public School located in Malton has won first place at the World Robot Olympiad in Italy.
Hear, hear.
Known as the Forest Guardians, Jatuk, Melanie, Chitra, and Rabunya created the BlazeBot, designed to sense wildfires in their early stages and alert local fire stations before it's too late. Under the coaching of their French immersion teacher, Priya Parekh, and the support of their librarian, Lydia Marcelli, the fantastic Forest Guardians made history as the first ever Canadian team to take top spot at this competition.
Hear, hear.
Speaker, when I look at their faces, I know with deep conviction that their futures will help determine no less than the destiny that this nation will fulfill. It's clear to me that the future of Mississauga-Malton is bright and promising, and I invite all parliamentarians in joining me to congratulate them and celebrate their significant achievement.
Hear,
Thank
hear.
you.
The Honourable Member from Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, in even our smallest communities in the Northwest Territories, the drug trade and accompanying addiction issues have reached a boiling point. Our community members, many dealing with trauma, are facing predatory dealers who sell to anyone to ensure they become repeat customers. It doesn't matter if you live in a city, town, village, hamlet, or charter community. We're watching our communities all sizes as they struggle with ensuring they are safe and healthy places to live. The Government of Canada must continue to work with the Government of Northwest Territories, community and Indigenous governments to create and strengthen tools to disrupt and combat drug trade and provide support and aftercare options that work for Northerners. To protect our residents at risk, we need all levels of government at the table to end the drug crisis that is harming our families and our communities. Message home, Mr. Speaker.
Here, here. The Honourable Member from Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On September 27th, my father, Jason Felix Couric, unexpectedly and suddenly passed away at age 54.
Ooh, brutal.
My dad was a good man. He chose life, he always worked hard, and gave generously even when he didn't have much to give. He loved farming, a work that creates a bond that few will understand. He built deep friendships from the field to Parliament Hill. He lived with humility and grace, showing us that faith in Jesus is shown by love and care. But while kind, he also never backed down. On the hockey ice or elsewhere, he stood for what was right and the values that built this country. He was a devoted husband to Mom for 35 years. He was a loving father, and he adopted his kids-in-law like his own, and he was a seriously proud papa. Our family and community lost a truly good man. Thank you to everyone for the support during these difficult weeks, both in consort and here. But in the midst of our grief, my hope is that everyone can remember my dad, Jay, by living with the strength, generosity, and faith that he showed us. I love you, Dad, and until we meet again.
The honourable member from Surrey Newton.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians across this country are deeply concerned by the
Somebody give me a break. Just give me a break.
Conservative Party's lack of attention to India's criminal activities and interference in Canada. Yesterday at Public Safety and National Security Committee, Conservative members had the opportunity to engage with senior officials but chose to focus on everything other than the actions of the Government of India and the security of Canadians. At this critical time, not a single question has been raised in this House by the opposition leader regarding the safety of Canadians. He had failed to hold a press conference and delegated a statement through his MPs reflecting disturbing level of disengagement. He remains without security clearance, hindering his ability to gain a complete understanding of national security issues. Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve better.
Yes, they do.
The honourable member from Peterborough Kawartha.
After 9 years, this Liberal NDP government is not worth the cost of housing. The housing minister has allocated $8 billion of taxpayer money to housing programs that have built zero homes, like the failed Housing Accelerator Fund. The only thing it's accelerated is tent encampments, rent, and headlines like this one. Priced out of rental market, Midland Senior lives in a shed. Common sense Conservatives have a plan. We will cut the GST on all new builds under $1 million. This will save Canadians $40,000 on homes of $800,000 value. Did you know in Ontario, government taxes account for 30% of housing prices? Wow. Enough with taxing people into poverty and hopelessness. Our compassionate common sense plan will stop the Liberals from forcing people to put up tents as housing. We will axe the tax and we will start building the homes.
Let's get this going.
The honourable member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, they are not worth the cost of their failed housing programs that has only doubled the cost of rent, mortgage, and down payments. Housing starts have dropped across the country, and the Liberals' own forecasts say it's only going to get worse in the years to come. That's why the response to our bold, common-sense Conservative plan to axe the GST on new homes sold was so well received this week. Leuna says it's good policy. The Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness says this is smart. The Greater Ottawa Home Builders and Build GTA both say that our tax cut instantly makes a significant improvement in housing affordability. It's because on an $800,000 new house, it will save home buyers $40,000 plus $2,200 a year in mortgage payments, and it's going to spark 30,000 extra new homes in this country each year. Mr. Speaker, instead of funding photo ops, more bureaucracy, and less home building, it's time to bring home more homes for Canadians.
The honourable member from Surrey Centre.
Speaker, yesterday the
Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security heard from top national security and law enforcement officials on the extent of the Indian government's interference in Canada, including serious criminal activities, extortion, and the murders of Canadian citizens. Canadians from across the country are shaken and scared of this blatant attack on our democracy and on their safety. Despite their concerning evidence, Canadians still have not heard directly from the leader of the Conservative Party on this issue. His silence has been noted in this House, and now it is being noticed in committees. Canadian citizens have died at the hands of a foreign government. What will it take for the leader of the Conservative Party to give this issue the seriousness that it deserves?
Yes,
The honourable member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and early screening can catch harder to find cancers like triple-negative breast cancer, or TNBC, which is more frequently diagnosed in patients under 50. Those diagnosed with TNBC represent anywhere from 10 to 20% of the overall breast cancer population, and it is more likely to affect Black and Hispanic women. Most people have never heard of TNBC, and some Canadians are not even aware that there are different types of breast cancer. We need to greatly improve awareness of triple-negative breast cancer and all breast cancers and ensure that there is more equitable access to screening and treatments. More education, earlier screening, and earlier detection means greater chance of survival. In closing, I recognize friends and breast cancer survivors from Port Moody, Coquitlam, Unstoppable Captain Jen Dawkins, my wonderful neighbor, Hila Shavit, and retired Captain Paula Fado.
Order, please. The honourable member for, Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. I'd like to pay tribute to an illustrious member of this House, elected at the age of 28 in Verchères during the first bloc election in 1993. Re-elected again until he made the leap to the National Assembly of Quebec in 2005, where he served as Minister of Public Security from 2012 to 2014. After a brief departure from politics in 2018, he returned to his first love under the Bloc banner in the 2019 election. You've probably gathered who I'm talking about, the current member for Montarville. Known for his inexhaustible energy, hard work, and total devotion to his constituents, he has always been held in high esteem by his colleagues.
Just a couple people that popped in the room. Backyard Garden, good to see you. My girl, Kenzie Kraken, always a pleasure to have you here.
He took everyone by surprise when he announced that he would not seek re-election in the next election. We will no doubt miss him on the Hill, but we're delighted to know that he'll remain a proud supporter of the Quebec independence cause. Stéphane, congratulations on your 30th birthday, and thank you for all.
Did I catch you, Dave B? Sorry if I missed. It's easy to miss. I don't know why it doesn't give you a nice list of the people that are in the room, but it doesn't seem to. Hard to keep track of. It's busy sometimes.
All you've done.
Celebrating his 30 years of public service. Stéphane Bergeron.
Good to see you, Cryptomeria. I think I missed you as well. I apologize for anybody that I miss. I want to include everybody. Trevor W., what's going on, brother? Did I see Terry Hooper in here earlier?
Have cellular telephones. We heard it ringing during the last statement by a member. I'll just ask members, please be mindful that their telephones should be
What's up, Coyote?
on silence while it's in the House. The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
There's only one guy left keeping this Prime Minister in power. That's the leader of the NDP and stuntman who scammed voters right before a by-election. Remember the leader of the NDP's big stunt when he told Canadians he ripped up his coalition deal with the Liberals? In fact, the leader of the NDP said, quote, "The Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people," end quote. But the NDP leader is all talk and is selling out to keep his Prime Minister in power. The leader of the NDP voted for the carbon tax 24 times, the same one that sends Canadians to food banks in record numbers with over 2 million visits in a single month. The NDP leader supports the inflationary deficits, voting to fund corruption like this Prime Minister's $60 million Arrive scam. Every day that this Prime Minister remains in power is because of the leader of the NDP. It's time for a carbon tax election so Canadians can fire this costly and corrupt NDP Liberal government.
The honourable member from Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, recently I spoke in this House about the growth of radical far-right movements. They've organized disinformation campaigns, impacted how some people and politicians treat others, and have led to some politicians not acting in the best interests of Canadians. As our Prime Minister recently said, we've seen that anti-vax messages during the convoy, during the pandemic, were amplified by Russian propaganda, especially in the media of the right, and that this media began spreading pro-Putin propaganda, and that Russia Today is currently funding bloggers and other YouTube personalities of the right, such as Tucker Carlson, in order to amplify messages that are destabilizing democracy. What this tells us is that some of these far-right movements and opinion leaders are not only harming Canada, but they're doing so at the bidding of Vladimir Putin. Some of these far-right movements are agents of foreign influence. So I wonder why the leader of the opposition will not get his security clearance and not take this seriously. I urge us all to take the actions we need to stop the influence of these radical far-right movements, because our security, our economy, and our freedom depend on it.
Oral questions, questions orales.
No.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, Canada made a promise to everyone. It's very simple. Work hard, get a big paycheck, and buy food and affordable housing in safe communities, no matter where you're from. But this Canadian promise, like everything else, is broken after 9 years of this Prime Minister who's doubled the cost of housing. This week, I proposed eliminating the GST on the purchase of a new home. Everyone is in agreement it's going to reduce the cost of a new home. Will the Prime Minister accept my common sense idea? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The problem, Mr. Speaker, the fundamental problem for the opposition leader is that all the challenges he sees, he's got one solution for them: cutting services, programs, and investments for Canadians. Even when he tries to put forward solutions for housing, he wants to cut. He cuts thousands, millions, billions of dollars in building more housing. He's calling for a cut of $9 billion that we're sending to the government of Quebec to accelerate housing starts across Quebec. We need investments to build new homes, not cuts and austerity. That's all that the Conservative Party is offering us. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. It's not surprising that the Prime Minister is against cutting GST on housing, because he doubled the cost. He did it by breaking the immigration system, by printing $750 billion in inflationary funding, by funding bureaucracies that prevent construction, and by putting new taxes on housing. He's trying to build more bureaucracy in Ottawa, bureaucracy that doesn't lead to any new housing. So, once again, will he go back on 9 years of failure, accept our common sense idea, cut GST on new homes? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party's plan is to cut hundreds of millions of dollars for Quebec, to cut investments in housing across the country. That's not what Canadians need. We are investing in housing. We are investing to build more opportunities across the country for people, and all he's offering is billions of dollars in cuts in services and programs and services that Canadians need. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Canada makes everyone a promise. It's a very simple deal. You work hard, you get decent food, and a good home in a safe neighborhood. Doesn't matter where you come from, you work hard, that's what you get. But that promise, like everything else, is broken after 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister. He's doubled housing costs. That's why I came forward with a now widely celebrated idea to axe the GST sales tax on new homes, saving up to $50,000 on the cost of a new home. Will he accept my common sense plan to axe the tax and build the homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the only thing that the Conservative leader is offering at a time where Canadians need support is cuts. He's proposing to cut billions of dollars of investments in housing across the country to increase densification, to cut red tape, to accelerate the construction of homes and apartments that Canadians need. He's offering cuts. He's offering austerity. He's saying everything is broken, and then he's thinking that cuts to services and programs and investments is what's going to help Canadians. That's not responsible leadership, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He proposes to cut bureaucracy and taxes, Mr. Speaker. Let's axe the sales tax on new homes, saving up to $50,000 on a new home. That's a savings of almost $2,700 per year in lower mortgage payments. By contrast, the Prime Minister offers a multi-billion-dollar housing bureaucracy in Ottawa that his own housing minister admits doesn't build homes. Wow. So why won't he listen to his own housing minister and accept my common sense plan to axe the tax and build the homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, one of the most fundamental responsibilities of any Canadian Prime Minister is the safety of Canadians. Unfortunately, the Leader of the Opposition has failed at his responsibility to keep his own MPs safe from foreign interference. So I have asked the security services to figure out a way to give some information to the Leader of the Opposition so that he can actually fulfill his responsibility of protecting Canadians, including those within his own caucus. It would be easier if he got a security clearance, but I've asked them to give him some information nonetheless.
So how many times does Poilievre need to explain why he wouldn't get a security clearance until he can do something with it? And Trudeau can also just march over there and tell him, like, don't be fooled, Canadians.
Can I ask the Honourable Member from Selkirk into Eastmain, please, not to take the microphone. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the Prime Minister has told his caucus he's not sleeping. He's pulling his hair out with stress because of his caucus revolting against him. Now he's spreading tin pot conspiracy theories rather than answering the question. 80% of Canadians now believe that home ownership is only for the very rich after he doubled the cost of housing in 9 years. I came forward with a common sense plan to axe the GST on new homes, saving up to $50,000 on a new home. Why won't he accept my plan to axe the tax and build the home?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
He just put forward a plan to cut billions of dollars of investment in housing across the country. But, Mr. Speaker, in regards to issues of national security, it is extraordinarily difficult to see a leader of the Conservative Party refuse to get the necessary security briefings that would allow him to protect his own MPs and indeed protect our Canadian democracy. So I have asked the security services to figure out a way to share some information, perhaps even some names, with the leader of the Conservative Party so that he can take action and protect his members.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. How to lose at Politics 101. 80% of voters are asking the Prime Minister to increase old age security for seniors aged 65 to 74. Every party here voted in favour of it, even his. Thanks to the Bloc Québécois, the Prime Minister had a unique opportunity to be fair to seniors, please 80% of people, and stay in power. He could have scored a triple, Mr. Speaker. Instead, he chose to abandon seniors, to say no to 80% of voters, and to buy himself an election. 0 for 3, Mr. Speaker. Does he understand now why nobody wants him around anymore? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Our government is investing in seniors. We increased the guaranteed income supplement by 10%. We are helping older seniors, those aged 75 and up, with an increase in old age security. And we delivered dental care. Over 1 million seniors across the country have seen a major difference thanks to that program. Dental care, by the way, that the Bloc decided to vote against. I would suggest that if they're taking suggestions on how to be popular in politics, that they deliver dental care services to seniors who need it. Maybe that would be a good thing that they could do instead of being like the Conservatives and voting against it. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The Prime Minister could have helped 1 million Quebec seniors with the help of the Bloc. Instead, he abandoned them to go back to his ex who kicked him out, the NDP. You know, he went back, his tail between his legs, to a party that's so disconnected from Quebec that its only Quebec MP is desperately looking for a way out and into the administration of the City of Montreal. I feel sorry for Montreal. The Prime Minister could have chosen 1 million Quebecers. Instead, he chose 25 MPs, 96% of whom are from outside of Quebec. Does he understand that we don't need a secret ballot to know that nobody in Quebec trusts him anymore? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we can understand that when the Bloc has the support of the Conservative Party, Quebecers are going to be very concerned. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that we are here to invest in seniors. We were there with dental care, where the Bloc and the Conservative Party voted against it. We were there to increase the guaranteed income supplement by 10% for the most vulnerable seniors. That's one of the very first things that we did as a government, and the Bloc and the Conservatives voted against it. We were there to increase old age security for seniors 75 and up because they have more costs, and the Bloc voted against that as well.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
Let's talk about women. In Alberta, Daniel Smith, the Premier, is privatizing healthcare and giving it to Covenant. Covenant refuses to give abortions. That is clearly a violation of the Canada Health Act. Does the Prime Minister agree? Yes or no?
Hear, hear.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are the government that has stood up for women's rights unequivocally across this country, including pulling back transfers to provinces where abortion services and reproductive health wasn't being delivered. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we're moving forward with more ways to protect women's rights. Just yesterday, we presented a Ways and Means motion that's going to mean that pregnancy crisis centres will have to disclose whether or not they're actually offering the full suite of reproductive services and rights to women, or whether they are going to leave women without support and without choices at an extremely delicate time.
That's right.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
It's her body, her choice, not her body, Conservative Party's choice.
The Conservatives have revealed a new plan for a cut. This time they want to cut in the Affordable Housing Accelerator Fund. And now the Bloc wants to support them. The Bloc had some power, but they weren't able to do anything to resolve the housing crisis in Quebec. People need affordable housing, not infighting. Will the Liberals finally wake up? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to follow up on the first part of the question from my honourable colleague on the fact that the Conservative Party continues to attack women's rights. Now, I certainly have questions about the Conservative MPs from Quebec within the Conservative Party of Canada who have sat on their hands while their colleagues attack women as rights, the anti-choice members of the Conservative Party. We are seeing women's rights under attack everywhere, and the Conservative Party is encouraging them with the MPs they've elected. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois and the leader of the Bloc Québécois has literally nothing, delivered nothing for Quebecers, nothing for seniors, nothing for farmers. But despite that, he voted almost 200 times to keep this Prime Minister in power. He voted for $500 million in inflationary bureaucratic spending, $500 million in deficit spending. At the same time, Quebecers are suffering from the cost of housing, which has doubled. Will the Prime Minister accept to call an election so that Quebecers can support my plan to get rid of GST on new homes? Just before I recognize the Prime Minister, I would just like to ask all members, please, to put your phones on silence. It's good for the interpreters. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I said it in English, I'll repeat it in French. We know that one of the fundamental responsibilities of everyone in this House is to protect the safety, security, and well-being of Canadians. However, with his completely unexplainable decision to not get his security clearance, the Conservative leader is putting Canadians at risk, including members of his own party. That's why I have asked our security services to share as much information as possible with the Conservative leader so that he can better protect his MPs, despite the fact that he's still refusing, for reasons that we don't know, to get his security clearance to know everything about this issue. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This Prime Minister doubled housing costs, doubled the debt, doubled gun crime, and now doubled food bank use, that the NDP would be pulling its support. After all, the leader said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people, and yet there he is, still in power. He doesn't even have the confidence of his own Liberal MPs, but he seems to still have the confidence of the sellout NDP leader. So, will the costly carbon tax coalition stand up in front of Canadians and let people vote in a carbon tax election for change in the future?
I ask members to be very judicious in their choice of words regarding specific members. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, watchers of Canadian politics will remember that last year the Conservative Party got up pretty much every time they could to talk about national security. To talk about it in a partisan way, but to talk about it every chance they could get. And now that we have offered the Leader of the Opposition a security clearance so that he can be fully informed on national security, all that they've been able to say is political attacks and asking questions of other parties. Why has the Leader of the Opposition chosen to not get a security clearance when the safety of his own MPs is in the balance?
All those losers on
the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Cabinet Row.
Speaker, it looks like the Prime Minister is worried about his personal political security as his MPs are revolting and trying to push him out of the job. And so he's desperately trying to change the channel on the questions that I've asked. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think that's unfair, though. Those MPs helped this Prime Minister double housing costs, double the debt, double gun crime, double food bank use. Why won't he turn around and look them in the eye and say they should stand up for their own record and his, face the music in a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no responsibility by the government is more important than keeping Canadians safe. That's why our security services every single day take actions and work hard to keep Canadians safe. So it is inexplicable to our security services that they cannot let the leader of the Conservative Party know about the threats facing him, his party, and our democracy because he refuses to get a security clearance. So I have asked those security agencies to look at ways to share at least some information with him and perhaps some names so that he can protect his
Trudeau can walk right over there and tell Poilievre anytime he wants. So every time he's questioning this security clearance thing, it's egg on his face, and he's showing you again and again and again what kind of a liar and manipulator. Like, he's just trying to dupe Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, if he wants to release the names, he legally can do it now on the floor of the House of Commons. He can do it.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, now we're getting something. He's actually engaging on the issue of national security. Unfortunately, he is willing to put at risk the agents, the officers, the sources that are putting their lives at risk to keep Canadians safe. There is a reason we do not disclose classified information in places where our adversaries are watching and paying attention. But we can release many names to him and much information to him if he only gets his security clearance. So he will be able to keep his own team members safe from foreign interference, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He won't release the names because he knows that he and his party are compromised. And he won't answer my question because right now, 24 of his MPs are rebelling against him. They're asking for a secret ballot to fire him, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, as I say, that is not fair. Every one of those MPs helped this Prime Minister create 1,400 homeless encampments in Ontario. Every one of them voted to quadruple the carbon tax. They can't just throw him out. He can't just run away. They need to face the music. Why won't we have a carbon tax election now?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
For well over a year in this House, just about every question from the Leader of the Opposition was about national security, was about foreign interference. And we called a commission of inquiry. We've offered security clearances to all leaders. And indeed, the leader of the Green Party, the NDP, and the Bloc have all done the responsible thing and gotten their security clearances and gotten top-secret briefings from our security services. The leader of the Conservative Party chooses to play the pettiest form of politics instead of stepping up on his responsibilities as leader, protecting Canadians, protecting his MPs, protecting our institutions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, security and safety depends on housing. In Quebec, the cost of housing has doubled. In Montreal, the cost of rent has tripled after 9 years of this Prime Minister who's building bureaucracy, who's printing money, who's broken the immigration system, and who has applied taxes on corrupt businesses. And that's why I've proposed a common sense idea to cut the GST on housing. The Prime Minister says that he'd rather put money into bureaucracy. I want to cut taxes for those who are buying a home. Can we have an election on the question of eliminating the GST on housing? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are extremely perplexed right now because we know very well that the Conservatives, apparently, according to themselves, are interested in law and order and crime and national security and defense. It's in everything that they put out in the elections. But when it comes time where there's a real threat to Canadians' safety and even to the safety of his own MPs, the Conservative leader refuses to get his security clearance. He refuses to take his responsibilities seriously. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Maskinongé. Every party here voted to protect supply management with C-282. Every party stood with farmers to call on the Senate to stop blocking this bill. Everyone is telling Senators Beam and Harder to get to work. It's time today for the Prime Minister to take his responsibilities seriously, to be responsible for our farmers. He appointed the senators who are blocking this bill, and it's his fault that we're stuck with them. Will he finally ask these two Royal Highnesses to pass Bill C-282 immediately? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have always been very clear that we will protect supply management. That's what we did against the Trump administration. That's what we will continue to do by making sure that we keep our promises to always protect supply management in any free trade negotiations that we undertake in the coming years. We are defending that right now, and we expect the Senate to pass this bill so that we can make sure that the future of supply management will always be protected for Canadians. We completely agree with the Bloc Québécois on this. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Maskinongé. Well, nice words, Mr. Speaker, but not only did he appoint these senators, the senators that are blocking C-282, but one of the two of them is even a good buddy of his. Peter Harder brags about it on his Senate webpage. He says that the Prime Minister, when he was in the opposition, called him several times for advice and help. And then 6 months later, he got a Senate seat. The Prime Minister in person picked up the phone and called him. If the Prime Minister can call him for advice, can he not ring him up to tell him to do his job? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we recognize the independence and the important work that the Senate does. The Senate studies bills, makes recommendations, and over the years, we've appointed exceptional senators who are doing responsible and diligent work in that place. At the same time, we always expect the senators to take into account the will and the decisions of this House. And the House voted unanimously to protect supply management, as we've always committed to do, protecting supply management in any trade agreement and free trade negotiations. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. 9 years after this Prime Minister promised to end chronic homelessness, it's gone up by 38%. But happily, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness says that my Conservative plan to eliminate the GST on the purchase of a new home is, quote, intelligent. So if the Prime Minister is really interested in ending the housing crisis that he created, will he listen to the people who are trying to end homelessness and accept my common sense plan and eliminate the GST on new homes? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. To fight homelessness, I would recommend that the Conservative leader call his friends, the Conservative premiers of Saskatchewan and Ontario, to accept and tell them to accept the money that we're putting on the table to fight homelessness. And
thank you so much, Kenzie Kraken. That's very, very generous. Welcome to all the new members. Appreciate it so much, Kenzie. I don't know what to say. Like, that is very generous. Welcome to the new members. Thank you, Kenzie.
Our institutions, our democracy, and his own colleagues in the Conservative Party. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And Builders Association stated that my common sense Conservative plan to axe the sales tax on new homes under $1 million is, and I quote, the most significant housing announcement made in the past 2 decades. Removing the GST shows leadership to cut crippling levels of taxation on new housing, puts money directly back in the pockets of Canadians while combating the housing crisis. Why won't the Prime Minister listen to the people who build homes so that we can reverse the crisis he caused? Why don't we axe the sales tax on new homes today?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
You know what shows leadership, Mr. Speaker? Taking seriously the safety of Canadians. Exactly. Mr. Speaker, the RCMP has concluded that the government of India was involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil, in extortion, in violence, in drive-by shootings, in home invasions, and the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada refuses to get his security clearance so that he can keep Canadians safe, can even keep his fellow MPs safe. That's why I've asked our security services to find a way to share some information with him so maybe he can do at least a part of his job.
He's such a coward and a liar. Like, Poiliev should just say, you can tell me, stop doing this duping of Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We'd like to see him do any of his job after 9 years, Mr. Speaker, like reversing the housing price increase he caused. Let me quote British Columbia's Victoria Residential Builders Association said, quote, reducing government costs, including GST, would have a significant impact on housing affordability. The Conservative leader's suggestion is welcome news and long overdue if the federal government wants to get serious about housing affordability for Canadians. This common sense plan will stimulate 30,000 new extra homes built every year. So will he accept my common sense plan to axe the tax and build the homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Conservatives, you always need to look at the fine print underneath the easy slogans. And the fine print on this one is cutting billions of dollars of investments in housing right across the country at a time where we need to be building more housing more quickly. Cuts are not the solution. But if he wants to take something seriously, perhaps he should take seriously the issue of national security, because he refuses, for inexplicable, political, childish, who knows what reasons, refuses to get his security clearance that will allow him to keep his own MPs safe, to keep Canadians safe, to keep our democracy and its institutions safe.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After 9 years after promising he'd get rid of chronic homelessness, it's actually risen by 38%. Now there are 1,400 homeless encampments in Ontario. It's almost as bad as it is in NDP-governed British Columbia. But there is good news. The Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness heard about my common sense plan to axe the GST on housing, and their founder said, this is smart. Mr. Speaker, those who are fighting to end homelessness, like my solution of axing the sales tax on new homes, will he accept my plan to axe the tax and build the homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, like I said, if he wants to be helpful on the issue against homeless, maybe he could give a call to his fellow Conservatives, the premiers of Saskatchewan and Ontario, to agree to accept the money we're putting on the table that they could match to support people living in encampments and fight homelessness effectively on the ground. But he won't do that. What else he won't do is get his security clearance so that he can actually protect his fellow MPs, protect Canadians in this democracy. He refuses to get the security clearance necessary to keep Canadians safe. That's not the kind of leadership Canadians have.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
Systemic anti-black discrimination is widespread in the public service. In fact, the Treasury Board Secretariat found that the Canadian Human Rights Commission discriminated against black employees. Now, instead of supporting these workers, Right now, the Liberal government is fighting these workers in court. So will the Prime Minister stop fighting black employees in court and settle the Thompson class action lawsuit?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in extending the UN decade of support for people of African descent, this government has done more to recognize systemic bias, systemic discrimination, unconscious bias, and anti-black racism than any other. But there is always more to do, Mr. Speaker, which is why we have stepped up with the black entrepreneurship strategy that is responding to the needs by black communities to access more capital, to create the prosperity that they so need to be able to create for their communities, why we're continuing to invest in anti-black racism initiatives, continuing to stand with the black community. There's always more to do, and we will do it, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Abortion is health care. 1 in 3 people who can get pregnant will need abortion care in their lifetime. But for close to a decade, this Liberal government failed to remove barriers, letting Conservative...
So let's see if we're figuring out some tricks here. She's setting up the Liberals to answer this question so they can just trash the Conservatives. That's how they're manipulating it. Like Billy Idol here, she wants more, like, oh God.
Premiers cut access
Wait and see
to
the way the
abortion.
Liberals trash the Conservatives after
And this
this.
Conservative leader secretly voted 5 times to take away the right to choose. Wow. Canadians want to see access to reproductive health care protected. Why have the Liberals not enforced the Canada Health Act to protect equal access to health care, including abortion?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my daughter is in the gallery today, so I want her to hear me as long as everyone else does. This government is unequivocally pro-choice. We will always defend a woman's right to choose, full stop. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we've actually pulled back funding from provinces that haven't been delivering access to abortion in their jurisdictions, why we will continue to enforce the Canada Health Act. But, Mr. Speaker, it is the Conservative Party, with its dangerous attack on women's rights, that should have people worried right across the country. At a time where we've seen Roe versus Wade overturned, attacks on women's rights, the Conservative leader can't stand up and defend women's rights.
I'd like to remind the Right Honourable Prime Minister and all members, please, to not make mention to people in the galleries. It is against the rules of this place. Alors, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for St. Laurent. Mr. Speaker, our government has always protected women's right to choose, but the anti-choice lobby of the caucus and the Conservative caucus and the leader are controlling it. And some of these anti-choice organizations that support the Conservatives use deceptive tactics to deter women from accessing a complete array of reproductive care. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians about the measures taken by our government to protect women from these centres?
Le très honorable.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the member for St. Laurent for her diligent work on defending women's right. We have heard too many women tell us about how they experienced shame, and that's unacceptable. That's why yesterday we presented a bill to force these centres to be more transparent. Otherwise, they risk losing their status as a charitable organization. Unlike the Conservative leader, the Liberals will always defend women's right to choose and their right to access the health care they need, including the entire array of reproductive care services. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister says that he opposes taking the GST off of new homes. He wants to keep the taxes high and keep housing prices rising. His solution is to fund more bureaucracy. And what has that done? Well, that's doubled housing costs. It's caused a 39% increase in homelessness rates. So I've got an idea. Why don't we let Canadians decide? If he won't have a carbon tax election, why don't we have a housing tax election and allow Canadians to decide on more bureaucracy through him or axing the sales tax through me.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians watching today will see that the Leader of the Opposition is refusing to stand up and take a strong position in protecting women's rights unequivocally in this House. He can't because his MPs won't let him. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, he's refusing to protect his MPs by not getting the security clearance necessary to get fully informed on threats.
Okay. Every time he's going to tell this lie, I'm going to explain. Like, Trudeau can just tell Poilievre what's up. He's making this into something which only makes him look like a liar. I guess that there's a couple of people in here that still have a little support for the Liberals. Keep watching. You won't. Trudeau's a liar. Every one of his cabinet ministers is filthy rotten and very unlikable, even hateable, some of them. Trudeau's just lying right to your face and thinks he's going to get away with it.
To our democracy from foreign powers. Why won't he get the security clearance necessary to take international interference seriously?
That's right. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, his tinfoil hat conspiracy theories and misinformation will not distract. We stand up for women's rights every day on this side. It has been our 20-year-long policy in the Conservative Party that there will be no restrictions on women's reproductive choices or on abortion. He knows that, but he doesn't want to discuss the issues that we do disagree on, which are this. Housing costs have doubled under him. His solution is to spend billions more on bureaucracy that drives them up further. We want to help women and men own a home, so will he vote for a housing tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd be interested to see him do a very simple thing in his next answer. Switch the order of the statements he just made. Anytime he talks about unequivocally standing up for women's rights in this House, crickets from the Conservative backbench. That is because consistently members of the Conservative Party of Canada move forward measures that restrict and restrain women's rights, that limit women's rights to full suite of reproductive services. The Conservative Party members do not stand up for women's rights, so nor does the...
So what he just did there, Trudeau, does that fool you? Like, he's just, oh, you've got to put it in the different order. And then he's saying, he's agreeing that Poilievre agrees with him on abortion, but then tries to throw out some scandal that that the backbenchers of the Conservative Party are cricket. It's all deception, guys. Delay, divide, distract.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of women's rights, just yesterday, his former parliamentary secretary came out publicly, Selina Cesar-Chavannes, and said that she was abused, intimidated, and mistreated by this Prime Minister, that he used her for his fake feminist agenda, and that he treated her like garbage, Mr. Speaker. It is terrible the way he exercises hypocrisy. Housing hypocrisy by doubling costs, tax hypocrisy by raising people's prices while flying around the world. How about putting an end to the hypocrisy and calling a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
What is fascinating, Mr. Speaker, is the spectacle of watching...
I would ask the honourable members to not speak when they are not recognized by the chair.
Frog lip Fergus.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is fascinating to see the lengths to which the Conservative leader will go to avoid the issue of national security, to avoid the issue of safety of Canadians, to avoid talking about issues of foreign interference, because he cannot answer why he refuses to take the security clearance that would allow him to access top secret information focused on keeping his members safe, keeping our democracy safe. We know that foreign governments interfered in the last leadership campaigns in the Conservative Party. He wants nothing to do.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, Prime Minister is coming unglued. He's flailing around, spreading conspiracy theories and demonstrable disinformation in order to distract from the fact that not only did he double housing costs, double gun crime, and double food bank use, but now 24 of his own MPs want to fire him. We can't go on like this with a Prime Minister who admits he can't even sleep at night because he is so in knots. Will he let his 24 dissident MPs vote freely on a non-confidence motion so we can have a carbon tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm confused about what happened. The Conservative Party used to be out about defence of Canada, but they dropped the defence spending to below 1% last time they were in office. They're supposed to be about law and order, but they stand against stronger measures on gun control. And they're supposed to be about national security, and the leader of the Conservative Party refuses to get the necessary security briefings to keep our democracy safe and to distinguish from the conspiracy theories that float around what is fact and what is fiction. Why won't he trust our national security agencies?
Sorry, guys. I just found out that it's National Bring Your Daughter to Work Day to lie in front of the entire nation so that you can make her so embarrassed that it's uncomfortable when she goes to school. I didn't realize that it was at Bring Your Daughter to Work Day for the Prime Minister to embarrass his daughter in front of the entire nation while he lies 30 times in a row to Canadians. Same lie.
The Honourable Member for Montcalm. As of today, advance requests for aid will be allowed in Quebec. Finally, Quebecers diagnosed with a serious and incurable disease leading to incapacity will be able to submit a request to their doctors. But these doctors are still worried about the lack of legal protection because of this government's continued refusal to amend the criminal code. It's a lack of courage and a dangerous game the Liberals are playing. It harms patients and doctors who are worried about being sued. Will the Prime Minister show some compassion and amend the criminal code without delay as proposed by C390? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, medical assistance in dying is a deeply personal and sensitive choice that involves individuals and their families in a difficult decision. The potential expansion of eligibility in terms of these advance requests is a major decision. Therefore, we are launching a national conversation, and we will not take any legal steps in this bill yet because we want to cooperate with Quebec and with all provinces and territories in order to attentively assess the next steps. Thank you. The Honourable Member from Montcalm. It's not time to talk, it's time to act, because I might remind the Prime Minister that his government is a minority and could fall at any moment. Now, some of these consultations have already been done. And the fact that they're not going to pursue the government of Quebec doesn't change anything. We know that the next government will be conservative, and it's useless to claim the contrary. The far-right conservative wing is opposed to MAID, so why is the Prime Minister putting the fate of these patients in the hands of the Conservatives? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I fully agree with my colleague from the Bloc that the Conservatives represent a major risk for the freedoms of Canadians across the country, but we must not make any decisions that are too hasty on such an issue. We must ensure the protection of the most vulnerable Canadians and Quebecers, and we must ensure that people can make a free and informed decision. That is why we need to take the time necessary to work with the provinces and territories to evaluate the different issues and ensure that Canadians make the right choice. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Years of releasing violent gun criminals and leaving our borders open to smugglers. This Prime Minister has presided over a 116% increase in gun violence. And yet he was out boasting about it on Twitter. The Toronto Police Union, the largest police union in Canada, said his words were out of touch. They were offensive to victims and brave officers. So, given that his approach has doubled gun crime, why won't he accept our common sense plan? To lock up the gun criminals, scan the cans, and stop the crime.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when the Conservative Party's plan on guns is to unfreeze the market on handguns and legalize assault-style weapons across this country, nobody can take them seriously on the issue of guns. But they are talking about national security now and safety, which begs the question, why will the leader of the Conservative Party not get the necessary security briefings, clearance to get the necessary security briefings to show Canadians that he's capable of taking national security seriously?
And I ask the members to not carry on loud conversations, and particularly the honourable member from Waterloo across Iowa, while she is not being recognized. The honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Unfreeze. Mr. Speaker, it has never been easier for a criminal to get a handgun. In addition to which, that he's allowed it to be legal today to own a handgun. He has brought in an amnesty on his own gun ban, re-legalizing all the guns that he said he was going to ban. And 4 years after he held that big press conference with a scary-looking black gun on the front of his podium, a made-in-Hollywood-style cartoon, gun crime is actually up dramatically. So why doesn't he actually ban the criminals, secure the borders, and stop the crime?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, slogans furnished to him by the gun lobby don't keep Canadians safe. Canadians know that significant common sense gun control measures, which we have put forward, are what is making a difference in keeping Canadians safe, and we will continue to do that. But we are now at least talking about security issues, so Canadians may be wondering, why is it that the leader of the Conservative Party continues to refuse to get the appropriate clearances from our national security agencies so he can take the issue of foreign interference, including against his own party, seriously?
Once again, as I just mentioned before, I'm going to ask all members, please, not to have conversations across the way, including the member from Dufferin-Caledon. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there's been an increase in an increase of 800% with regard to since the Prime Minister has allowed these hard drug consumption sites. People who live in that community are terrified because of the chaos that this Prime Minister has sown. Under Section 56(1) of CDSA, to close these drug consumption sites, will he do so? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the opioid crisis and drug addiction is a scourge that profoundly impacts Canadians across this country. Our approach is science-based, it's fact-based, and also we use compassion, and we try to work with the organizations on the ground, with the provinces and the municipalities and experts. We will continue to take this approach. We will not criminalize people who have mental health problems, and that is going to save lives, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Humber River, Black Creek.
Mr. Speaker, our government has always been clear that ensuring a woman's freedom of choice should be protected. But many Canadians are rightfully worried that a Conservative government would not protect this fundamental right. It is alarming that women's rights and freedoms are under attack in the Conservative Party. Can the Prime Minister tell us how our Liberal government will continue to protect a woman's right to make decisions about her own body?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Humber River Black Creek is right. Yesterday, we announced that we're holding pregnancy crisis centres accountable for preventing women from making informed choices. While we're protecting women's freedom of choice, the Conservative Party is trying to roll it back. Any party leader that allows their MPs to introduce anti-choice legislation, actively recruits anti-choice candidates, and takes their money cannot say that they are pro-choice. Right. It's time the Conservative Party ends their filibuster and allows this House to vote on reproductive rights. Right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After 9 years, 9 million Canadians live in food insecurity, according to Food Banks Canada. 9 million, that's 23% of our population. 23%, twice as high as the rate in the United States. Food prices have risen 36% faster in Canada than in the States, and that gap has happened at the same time as the implementation of the carbon tax and all the government greed. Now he wants to quadruple the carbon tax and starve even more people. Why not have a carbon tax election so Canadians can vote to axe the tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Canada Carbon Rebate puts more money back in the pockets of the middle class and people working hard to join it. The Parliamentary Budget Officer recognized that 8 out of 10 Canadians are better off with the Canada Carbon Rebate than the price on pollution costs them in their jurisdictions. So the Leader of the Opposition is proposing to take away money from vulnerable families across this country at a time they need it. Terrible. What the Leader of the Opposition is also doing is refusing to get the security clearance necessary to keep Canadians safe by getting the briefings from our security agencies that talk about foreign interference.
Right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, if the carbon tax made people better off, we wouldn't see a doubling of food bank use under this Prime Minister. You can't blame the rest of the world. Food prices have risen 36% faster in Canada than in the United States of America in the same time period. And that gap grew as the carbon tax came in year after year over the last half decade. It turns out if you tax the farmers who make the food, the truckers who ship the food, the grocers who sell the food, you tax all who buy the food. So if he really wants to quadruple that tax, why not have a carbon tax election so Canadians can decide?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The Canada Carbon Rebate puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians right across the country, and it's top economists, scientists, and the Parliamentary Budget Officer who've declared that. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we know the Leader of the Opposition won't listen to experts. He won't even listen to our national security experts who are trying to let him know about threats to his own MPs. I have asked them to figure out a way to share at least some information with him, despite the fact that he has refused to get a security clearance, because the responsibility of Prime Minister is to protect all Canadians, including, apparently, Conservative MPs.
Such a coward.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, more division to distract. You know, here we have 2 million people lining up at food banks. 1/4 of Canadians live in food insecurity, a level twice as high as in the United States. Food prices rising 36% faster in Canada than in the US, coinciding with the carbon tax coming into force. Now he wants to quadruple it. 56% of food banks say they're literally rationing food rationing in a first world country, Mr. Speaker. Before he starves more people, why can't we have a carbon tax election and axe the tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if he actually cared about food insecurity instead of just wanting to politicize and instrumentalize it, he would have supported our national school food program. But he does not. What he also will not do is take seriously his responsibility as a party leader in this House, as someone who desperately wants to become Prime Minister, to actually get the security clearance and therefore the briefings necessary to protect our democracy, our institutions, and his team members from the threats of foreign interference. That, Mr. Speaker, is absolutely irresponsible.
That's right.
The Honourable Member from Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Public Safety Committee heard from top national security and law enforcement officials on Indian interference in Canada. Despite the concerning evidence, the Conservative leader refuses to speak directly on this issue, choosing instead to hide behind his MPs. The government has been clear that all responsible leaders need security clearances so they can make responsible decisions to protect Canadians. Can the Prime Minister explain why the Conservative leader should get his security clearance, get briefed, and protect our democracy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Kitchener-Conestoga for his hard work. Canadians shouldn't be surprised that the Conservative leader refuses to call out Indian foreign interference. He's refused to get briefed up, to get the security clearance necessary, to get the understanding that our national security agencies want him to have to better be able to both protect his own MPs, to protect our institutions, and to protect Canadians. Let me put it in phrases that perhaps the leader of the opposition will eventually understand. Get the clearance, get the briefings, protect Canadians.
The Honourable Member from North Island, Powell River.
Canadians who serve in the military deserve our gratitude and support. But we've learned that for at least 19 years, this Liberal government and the former Conservative government overcharged veterans and their families for long-term care beds. Again, veterans and their families have to fight this government tooth and nail to get what they are due. Canadians need to know who did what and when. Will the Prime Minister immediately end this long-term care gouging?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Veterans Affairs has asked her officials to investigate this matter further. We are committed to supporting our veterans, have been since day one. That's why we invested over $11 billion in new services and supports for veterans since 2016, including reopening the 9 veteran service centres that the Harper government shuttered, rehiring 1,000 staff that the Harper government had fired, and we're continuing to work to improve the services and benefits and supports for veterans and for their families.
That's right.
The Honourable Member from Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to talk about national security. Let's do it. On New Year's Eve, Canadians will be ushering in the Hogue Commission's final report on foreign interference. But meanwhile, media continue to provide insight as to who are the infamous 11 parliamentarians in the pocket of China. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister have trouble sitting at the cabinet table when he must wittingly know that at least one of his ministers is not working in the service of Canada, or is he entirely witless?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that was an absolutely disgraceful display of irreverence and unseriousness in a place that deserves a serious contemplation of issues of national security. But it doesn't surprise me he's choosing to sit with the Conservative Party of Canada because their leader won't even get the necessary clearance to get the necessary briefing to keep Canadians safe. It's irresponsible, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. Affaires courantes.
Routine proceedings. Tabling of documents. Introduction of government bills. Statements by ministers. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant.
All right, gang. So what my plan is now, I was trying to find out if there's possibly going to be a vote today. Can't really find out. I'm just going to watch. That is question period, though. Just going to try to pay attention and see if any action happens here. Maybe we'll get a vote. Who knows?
Standing Order 34-1.
Let's listen to what this little gimp liberal has to say.
In both official languages, the following reports of the
This little
Canada-Europe
wuss
Parliamentary
is a
Association
pansy.
respecting its participation at the second part of the 2024 ordinary session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, France, from April 15th to 19th, 2024. The Canada-Europe Parliamentary Association respecting its participation at the third part of the 2024 ordinary session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, France, from June 24th to 28th, 2024, and a revised copy of the Canada-Europe Parliamentary Association respecting its participation at the Atlantic Brook German-Canadian Conference in Berlin, Germany, from May 12th to the 14th, 2024. Mr. Speaker, I have 2 signed copies in French and 2 signed copies in English of each individual report for delivery to the table. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I see that the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary is rising on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I noticed there was I wanted to get the leave if required in order to go back to tabling of documents. We kind of skipped through it relatively quickly there.
Que tous ceux qui s'opposent à ce...
All those opposed to the honourable members moving the motion will please say nay. Very well, accordingly, the House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay.
Adopté.
Carried.
I'm afraid I do not. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, just for clarity, it was kind of skipped over really quick because of the voices inside the chamber at the end of question period. It's just to table some petitions. That's all it is.
The response is to petition.
I'll ask again. All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay.
Please observe that the Liberals have bailed. The Conservatives have their seats filled. Fed up with these Liberals guys. Like, you can't just watch Trudeau lie to your face for an hour, 30 or 40 times, telling only 3 lies, but telling them like multiple times, dozen times each. Embarrassing his daughter like that. That poor kid's got to go to school.
We do not have unanimous consent. Présentation de rapport de comité. The honourable member from Humber River Black Creek.
I have the honour to present in both official languages the 21st report of the Standing Committee on International Labour, referring to Canadian supply chains and the issue of forced labour. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member, l'honorable député de Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, I have the honour to present in both official languages the 19th report of the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities, entitled the Erie Lake Connector, a project in the best interest of the public. Pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee asked the government to table an overall response to the report.
Dépôt de
Introduction of private members' bills.
Première lecture de projet de loi d'intérêt.
First reading of Senate public bills. Motions. Mr. Boulris, seconded by Mr. Julian, moves that the 12th report of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities, tabled on October 6th, 2023, be concurred in. Debate. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Get ready for an earload
First
of
of all, I'd like to say that I will be sharing my time with the member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Excellent choix, je pense aussi.
And I think that's a very good choice. I am very pleased to rise in this House to speak of a matter that is of great interest to Canadians and Quebecers. The housing crisis. This is a crisis throughout the country. It will have very serious effects. This is a fundamental right, the right to house yourself and to have a roof over your head. For several years, with my team in Rosemont-La Petite Patrie, we've had a tradition, which is every year to rent out Beaubien Cinema and to get the rights for a documentary screening and to invite people to come watch the documentary for free. And it also gives people to have a chance to speak with the artist who created the documentary. So this year, we had an opportunity to watch a very interesting documentary, The Last Flip, which is a documentary about the great importance of the definancialization of real estate. The documentary makers, Ms. Bérard and Mr. Vachon, were in the room, and we were able to speak with them. There were also representatives of various housing organizations in the region, in the neighborhood rather. We saw that people were very interested in this. 2 entire rooms were filled. 500 people came to watch the documentary. And they also wanted to talk about solutions, because we've seen over the last few decades that there has been a real drift towards speculation, and the fact that investment funds and trusts are increasingly involved in buying and building housing. And this ends up leading to an increase in prices. It hurts people. There are various models for solutions. We should look at what happened with Bernie Sanders in Burlington in the 80s. We know that Bernie Sanders is a socialist senator in the States, but prior to that, he was mayor of Burlington. And at that time, he created what is called a community land trust. It's a type of investment tool. And so the way it works is that a family that wants to buy a home and the community land trusts become co-owners, co-investors. And so the person becomes co-owner, the family becomes a co-owner, and later, when the sale happens, well, the revenues of the sale are shared between the land trust and the family. And so people were able to make more advantageous purchases of homes based on that. And then at the end, the land trust ends up getting some of the revenue back, which means that it can later move forward and help someone else to buy a house. It can help families, students. That's how the mechanism works. We had some very interesting discussions about this alternative method that makes it easier to access a home, to access property. And today, this Champlain House property in Burlington has many housing units available, and it's enabled to keep the real estate market there much more under control and have much more affordable prices and accessible for people. So that's one model, but there are many others. For example, housing co-ops, which enable people to access apartments in a more affordable way. And once again, there are controls here. There are checks on the increase in the price of rent. So for people who may not be able to afford, say, a condo on the free market or a home on the free market, but when they access housing co-ops and their services, well, it's a good place for them to live, but also it leads to a sense of community, because people can work together, find solutions together, and they can decide how they want to repair and renovate their home. And these are all part of what we call non-market solutions, because there's just a different way of thinking about housing. And another possible solution is to use public lands to create truly affordable housing. And when I speak about affordable housing, I want to be very clear. Affordable means that we look at what the person is actually able to pay. We don't want to look at, say, an arbitrary level like 80% of the median price. No. We need to look at what's actually affordable. For example, at one point, a 2-bedroom in Montreal was considered affordable if it was at $2,200 a month. That's ridiculous. People who don't earn a high income, well, they're just not able to afford that. So the use of public lands to build truly affordable housing should be a priority. And that's a tool that works very well. Unlike the Conservatives, who want to sell public lands to private developers who will end up building housing with their only goal being to make as much in profit as they can as quickly as possible. It's the worst possible solution. It's the worst idea, and yet that's what the Conservatives are bringing forward. They have tunnel vision. They can only imagine this capitalist market-based system. They just want to maximize investor profits. There are many alternatives, like the community trust that I spoke about in Burlington, or an acquisition fund. So, as I said, we can use public lands, but we could also have taxpayer money set aside, a fund that would enable the government to buy homes, duplexes, triplexes, and so on. And that way, very democratically, we would be able to control prices and rents. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, Vienna in Austria has had this system, and so the government of Vienna buys up anything it can whenever an apartment or a house becomes available. It buys it up. And so today, 60% of real estate in Vienna belongs to the municipality. And guess what? There's not the type of speculation we've seen here in Canada for decades, that we've seen because of the bad decisions made by the Liberals and Conservatives. So this documentary that I was talking about, Le Dernier Flip, said that we should have a target of 20% of housing units being non-market. Not 100%, of course, we'll have a private sector. There'll be a private real estate sector, just as there is now, and that's fine. But currently the level is far too low. It's only 3%. We should set a target of 20%, because 20% would enable us to stabilize the market, and it would have a beneficial effect on the private market too, because it would slow down the fires of speculation. I see that I have barely any time left, so I would just like to add that there is a research group in Montreal called l'IRIS. It published a study in June 2024. We have a housing crisis where there are many people who are suffering. And so this IRIS report is called the winners of the housing crisis, because there are also winners. The real winners here are investment firms, funds, trusts, who end up with tax benefits and all sorts of things, and who are only there to try to make profits. 30 years ago, they made up barely any of our real estate market, and it's gone up from being essentially nothing to 20%. 20% of all of our housing stock in Canada. And this is all in the hands of people who only want to make money as quickly as possible. And it's this financialization of the real estate market, the housing stock. This IRIS report among other things, this report has shown us that it's harming people, it's harming renters. There's just not enough of.
All right, gang, we're going to wrap up here. We're going to just get into this. Before we go, I'd like to say hello to the people that are still hanging around. Again, I just get this list that they show me. I don't know why some names aren't included. I have no idea about that part. But what we do have still, we've got Annie G, Antonio, Betty Zoom, Bog Caddy, What Is Going On, Brenda Walworth, CG Visuals, Common Sense, Cryptomeria, Derek Sittler, Dino, Harry Scholes, Jeremy Booker, Yolanda, Julie Mack, Kenzie Kraken, thank you so much. That was very generous earlier. My man, Mark Tremblay, also very generous. Captain Kirk, you're such a huge support. People on this channel love you. You're a huge part of it. Mark Works, what is up? Megan RP, always a pleasure to have you in the chat room. You're funny. Michelle Ladisor, Mofo13, My Two Cents, Nathan Keating, Rapunzel, SW, Stinger 007, Sylvain Robert, and Valerie. Good to see you. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Like, it is tough because, well, those are just the names that I get to see. Anyways, we're going to wrap up with this, guys. Get out of here. Thank you all for watching and tuning in. It's been a blast. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. And we'll see what kind of lies they're going to tell tomorrow. Probably the same lies, unless there's another scandal, they'll be lying about that. Weird. I'm fed up. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Oh, yeah.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here? Oh, yeah.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF.
Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am.
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
That's a real leap. Thank you all so much for tuning in, watching this with me. Feels just like home, and that's great. We're out for today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Times are crazy in Canada, man. Like, and if you don't watch, you won't be in the loop. You don't have to watch it here, but you should watch Canadian politics somewhere. Get it from somewhere. Just because if not, you won't have anything to complain about because you won't be in the loop. That's it. I'm Ehren, Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe, get notified. Tell somebody about the show. Get a few more people in our chat room. It's so much fun. I look forward to the chat room every day. And today was another great illustration of why. Funny people that are looking for change in our country, which we desperately need. I cannot believe the amount that Trudeau just lies and thinks he's going to get away with it. Somebody's going to shoot him walking down the street. It's not going to be me. I wouldn't use a gun. But, like, sick of Trudeau. He's got to go. Thank you all for watching. It was a blast today. You're the best. Have a good evening.